At every level, the art of war requires intelligent and creative thought, and probably no more so than in the practice of deception, because there you have to see into the mind of your adversary, and you have to create for him a misleading picture of the operation to come, and you have to sell it to him with confidence. It's the highest kind of creativity in the art of war.
The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops was the idea of officers Captain Ralph Ingersoll and Colonel Billy Harris. Ingersoll was a popular American journalist who had already helped the British with deception tactics earlier in World War II. Billy Harris was a West Point graduate who provided the military expertise. Their vision was a traveling roadshow of sonic, visual, and radio deception. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops was divided into the 603rd Engineer Camouflage Battalion Special, the Signal Company Special, the 3132nd Signal Service Company Special, and the 406th Engineer Combat Company Special. Because the men moved from one place to another quickly and quietly, they became known as the Phantom or Ghost Army. When choosing who to recruit for the 603rd Engineer Camouflage Battalion Special, many budding young artists were picked from art schools in New York and Philadelphia. After being selected, they were sent to upstate New York for basic training and experimentation. Because there was no instruction manual for how to train artists for war, it was often frustrating. One of their first assignments was to disguise U.S. military plants to make them look like the countryside. One of these was the Glen L. Martin plant in Baltimore, where B-26 bombers were made. This was done to protect these plants from German bomber raids. The Army had not figured out what type of decoys the men would be using, so the men improvised, making wooden frames and spreading cloth over them. The Army experimented with different types of materials for decoys and found that inflatable rubber dummies worked the best. Because they could be deflated to a very small size, they were easy to store. The Ghost Army had an inflatable version of everything a real division would have: tanks, trucks, planes, and all types of artillery. The rubber decoys were made by various rubber companies such as U.S. Rubber and Goodyear Tire. The workers at these plants were told that they were making targets in order to maintain the Ghost Army's secrecy. The 3132nd Signal Service Company was responsible for audio deception. While at Fort Knox, Kentucky, these men, along with the help of engineers from Bell Labs, recorded many wartime sounds. Among the hundreds of sounds recorded were tanks crossing bridges and trucks moving in. Wind speed and direction affected how the sound traveled, so a mobile weather station accompanied the sonic unit. These sounds were recorded on wire, which was the state-of-the-art technology. A spool of wire was 2 miles and created sound for about 30 minutes. Unlike the record, the sound would never skip. These sounds were played over 500-pound speakers, which could carry sound over 15 miles. The speakers were put on half tracks that could be covered. In this way, the sounds of various battle scenarios could be transported to different locations. Radio deception was carried out by the Signal Company Special. Their job was to imitate the radio traffic of the unit that they were impersonating. Some estimates showed that 75% of German intelligence came from radio interception. The Germans analyzed enemy radio traffic to determine where the Allied units were located. The Ghost Army used this tactic against them by creating phony radio traffic. The operators of the Signal Company had to mimic the other operators' style of sending radio transmissions. This was all done to mislead the German intelligence. The soldiers on the 406th Engineer Combat Battalion were to act as the Ghost Army's security force. They were the only combat-trained soldiers in the unit. Although the 406th did not contribute as much to the artistic aspects of the Ghost Army, without their manpower and protection, the operations would not have succeeded. The first operation, Operation Elephant, only involved 15 men that were sent ahead of the rest of the Ghost Army. They landed on Omaha Beach 8 days after D-Day. Their mission was to set up dummy artillery 1 mile north of the actual battalion. This was to divert the German fire away from the Allies. 2 weeks later, the rest of the Ghost Army, except for the Song unit, was shipped over to France. The mission was to make it appear as if the Allied forces were moving west, retreating from the German front line. The Ghost Army simulated this by dividing into 4 separate task forces. Each unit impersonated a different infantry division through phony radio traffic. They were trying to draw the Germans west because American, British, Polish, and Canadian troops were lying in wait to encircle them in what we now know of as the Falaise Pocket. Unlike Operation Elephant, this second mission introduced the new technique of special effects. A memo was sent out to the men saying, "There is too much military and not enough showmanship." Lieutenant Fred Fox, an actor with the unit, began to direct the military theater of each operation. The men would put phony bumper markings on their jeeps as well as phony patches on their uniforms. Setting up phony headquarters and impersonating generals were allowed. The men were told to purposely leak information so spies would hear.
A lot of the guys went to the bakery, got rolls and stuff, and said, "We got to get an extra supply because we're moving out tonight," that kind of thing.
Did a lot of ride-through with 2 guys in the back of a truck to make it look like it was full.
This tactic proved extremely effective in later operations. With each operation, the Ghost Army perfected their skills. Their final and grandest mission was Operation Viersen. In this operation, their mission was to mislead the Germans as to where the Allies were crossing the Rhine River. Crossing the Rhine was critical to the winning of the war because this was the most direct route to Berlin. To do this, the 23rd would have to impersonate 30,000 men with only a mere 1,100. To enhance the illusion, some real tanks and artillery were added to the dummies. Over 200 decoy vehicles were used. Not only were phony headquarters set up, but fake supply depots and airstrips were built. The Sonic Company worked non-stop to simulate the sounds of tanks, trucks, and bridge construction. Some real bridge construction was done to make it more believable. The operation was successful because Allied troops were able to cross the Rhine with little resistance. It was obvious that the Germans were expecting the crossing somewhere else. Although deception has been used throughout history, the Ghost Army was unique because the sole purpose of this unit was to fool the enemy. These men were not called to fight with ammunition, but with their artistic talent and their brains. The Ghost Army brought wartime deception to the highest level by using the latest technology of sound effects to the unorthodox military strategy of impersonating commanding officers. Furthermore, if Ingersoll and others had not explored the idea of a deception unit, the Ghost Army would never have existed. It was not just a gathering of typical men, but the collaboration of great minds that led to such successful operations on the battlefield. It was said that the 603rd had the highest IQ of any unit in the Army. This group became an incubator for creativity and innovation. Their ideas were not only seen in the battlefield, but this exchange of talent manifested in their own art.
To be in the middle of this incredible adventure with the world at war in a foreign country, I just had to put it down.
We were sleeping in hedgerows and foxholes, but nothing kept us away from going someplace to do a watercolor.
Their 16 months in the Ghost Army helped to shape them as future artists. The greatest contribution these men made was saving lives on the battlefield. The story of this unit and the brave men who served in World War II must not be forgotten.